Good afternoon. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. It may seem a difficult thing to grasp this concept or this idea of, what am I going to say? Singularity. But what you need to understand is that reality is going on right now. Reality with a capital R. And it's not going on somewhere else. And there is a real you, and it's not going on somewhere else. If it were, there would be fragmentation, there wouldn't be singularity. And so what we've been reading about, and what we will continue to be reading about, is what's really going on right here, right now, so that you might grasp the fact that the experience of reality and the experience of your real self is only a perception away. It's not a lifetime away. It's not a dimension away. You could say it's only a misperception away. It seems as though we may be talking about something irrelevant to your life. Something spiritual that's very different. And if you think that, you will distance yourself from a miracle, a sudden shift of perception, in which you suddenly see reality more clearly right here, right now. And at the same time, have a new and clearer experience of what you are right here, right now. So let's begin. You have not failed to add to the inheritance of the sons of God. In other words, you, while you've been playing the part of an ego, in which you've actually been doing nothing, while you think you are doing a lot, have in truth continued to be the full-fledged son or daughter of God, and you have continued to contribute to the whole, which is what it means by the inheritance of the sons of God. You have not failed to add to the inheritance of the sons of God, and thus have not failed to secure it for yourselves. Remember again, what you give, you keep. What you extend, you make true for you. Continuing, if it was the will of God to give it to you, your inheritance, He gave it forever. If it was His will that you have it forever, He gave you the means for keeping it, and you have done so. In other words, reality has continued unaffected by your fantastic daydream. Disobeying God's will, or you might say the idea of disobeying it, because you can't actually disobey it. Disobeying God's will is meaningful only to the insane. In truth, it is impossible. And I would add, as an expression of singularity, in truth, it is impossible, and therefore has not been done. Your self-fullness is as boundless as God's. Like His, it extends forever and in perfect peace. Its radiance is so intense that it creates in perfect joy, and only the whole can be born of its wholeness. Now I'm going to tell you something. Even in the midst of every effort you make to be an authority over your life, a creator of your life, the definer of your life and everything in it, and even though, for the most part, it has all been an act of defense against being conscious of your godness, if I may put it that way, a denial of God in your affirmation of yourself alone, you still can't stop being what you are, and so you still manage to express love. And your expression of love is an extension of something real. Sometimes your motives aren't the best for extending it, but it doesn't change the fact that you still are extending love. And so you are still expressing the fullness of you, and you are, if I may put it this way, substantiating the fullness of the brotherhood. There are times that you insightfully recognize truth and express it. And in expressing it, you do make it your own, even though you tend not to pay as much attention to it or value it as fully as you ought to. But it remains a gift of extension that blesses the whole brotherhood. Now, continuing, be confident that you have never lost your identity and the extensions which maintain it in wholeness and peace. We've talked about the fact that when you instituted the bill of divorcement from your source, from the Father, God, you became an orphan, in effect, experientially, and you lost your identity because that which gave you identity was your Father. But it says here, be confident that you have never lost your identity and the extensions which maintain it in wholeness and peace. If you haven't lost it, you haven't become less than what you truly are. And therefore, you do not need to feel guilty just because someone has convinced you that you have become less than you are. It can't happen. You can ignore it, the wholeness of you. You can deny it and insist upon operating autonomously, but you can't get rid of it, and it doesn't stop being the fact of you, and so it's the fact of you right now. And that's why I keep saying right now is where to pay attention for it. Be confident that you have never lost your identity and the extensions which maintain it in wholeness and peace. Miracles are an expression of this confidence. Well, what does that mean? Well, what are miracles? Miracles are sudden shifts of perception in which truth is clearer to you. Miracles occur when you dare to act on the basis that you've never lost your identity, that you've never become less than you are, truly. When you dare to feel some confidence that the ultimate truth about you is the truth about you right now, you are primed for sudden shifts of perception, miracles that transform your perception of yourself and your brother, yourself and the world. They, continuing, miracles, are reflections both of your own proper identification with your brothers and of your own awareness that your identification is maintained by extension. By extension. By daring to say, I wish to see the evidence of love. I wish to be the evidence of love. Love with a capital L. Love that has its source in the Father flowing through you and given away as the willingness to acknowledge what is real with a capital R in each and everything. Continuing, the miracle is a lesson in total perception, meaning perception that isn't private. It means perception that is inclusive of everything, not only that in that you're not holding everything away from you as a thing for you to define, but in that you are allowing yourself to be open to the experience of the fact that all of it is part of the infinitude of your being, which is without limits. Continuing, by including any part of totality in the lesson, you have included the whole. When you're willing to love and allow that extension of love to be something more than a private, personal gift you are giving, as something standing apart from what is being given to, the singularity of being is able to pop into focus. And so, whatever it might be, a flower, the person sitting next to you, your pet, a tree, whatever individual thing you are willing to be undefended in the presence of, undefended against while you are in the presence of it, primes you to have a shift of perception in which you experience the fact that that one thing that you were willing to be undefended against and to be inclusive of has become a stepping stone for you to feel the fact that that gift has embraced everything and everything is embracing you back. So that you find that you're no longer being the initiator or the giver of good separate from everything, but that the giving and the receiving are, for lack of better words, circular. Whole. Not divided up into giving and receiving. You don't realize it, but absolutely everything you see is the presence and substance of love, the Father's love. Patterned in a way that is experienceable, including you, and everything is loving you. Everything is extending the love that the Father has placed in it by creating it with His love, because of love. And therefore, everything is extending love, even if you don't think it's animate or conscious. And so, when you are willing to be undefended against the reality of the flower, or the reality, the capital R reality, of any object you're observing, you are not setting into motion a chain reaction where you love it, and because of your undefendedness, it decides to love you back in response. No. When you become undefended against it, you allow yourself to be receptive to the love with which it has been loving you eternally. And so you come into an experience of something that has always been. You see? So you don't get love back from it because you finally arrived at a point where you're willing to let the Father's love flow through you because you have an object of your affection, something you care about. And then you cause that object of your affection to transform and love you back. You see? It's not a cause and effect thing. It's that, again, the willingness to be undefended with another or with an object, anything, the willingness to be undefended against it, allows the love of God to flow through you because that's your function. And it causes your eyes to become opened to the love with which everything always has been and is now loving you with. And so you come into not a cause and effect experience, but an experience of the stable, ongoing, permanent, active movement of love, extended and extending, that constitutes, for lack of better words, the fundamental tone and meaning and fullness of being. Now, this next sentence was directed at Helen, but it can apply to any of you who might have the same thought. You have said that when you write of the kingdom, in other words, as I was sharing with her these words, you have said that when you write of the kingdom and your creations which belong in it, you are describing what you do not know. See? And as you read the Course, don't you have the feeling that you're reading about what you do not know? About something that's foreign or different or otherworldly or out there or in another lifetime or in another dimension and so on. You have said that when you write what I'm dictating to you of the kingdom and your creations which belong in it, you are describing what you do not know. That is true in a sense, but no more true than your failure to acknowledge the whole result of the ego's premises. The kingdom is the result of premises, just as the world is. You have carried the ego's reasoning to its logical conclusion, which is what? Total confusion about everything. Yet you do not really believe this, or you could not possibly maintain it. If you really saw this result, you would not want it. And I'm adding, if you see something clearly for what it is, and it's obvious to you that you don't want it, you release it. It's of no use to you. The only reason why you could possibly want any part of it is because you do not see the whole of it. In other words, the only reason you want your ego perceptions and an ego frame of reference and to function as an ego is because you don't see the whole picture of what the ego amounts to. And simply put, we discussed 2 weeks ago that all there is to the ego is you wearing a mask. Now, if you saw that, really, you would abandon it. Again, you are willing to look at the ego's premises, but not at their logical outcome. Now listen, is it not possible that you have done the same thing with the premises of God? Your creations are the logical outcome of His premises. His thinking has established them for you. They are, therefore, there, exactly where they belong. The ultimate, I'm adding, the ultimate is already present and functioning right now, right where you are. I'm not going to ask you what you think God's premises are, because you don't have the faintest idea. But one way I can convey to you what the word premise means here is that there is a fundamental premise of being. There is a fundamental premise of the existence of God for God. And that fundamental premise is, I am. Everything that God is follows from that premise. And that premise is not fragmented into, I think I'm this, and I think I'm that, and I'm positive I'm the other thing, and I'm positive I'm not that. The premise is singular. I am. That premise of the the conscious experience of being is itself the initiator of the movement of conscious awareness called the movement of being. Everything follows from it and is like it. The word am is a form of the verb to be, and the verb is an action. Being is movement. So, that gives you a sense of what the word premise means as it's being used here. The premises of God. Your creations are the logical outcome of His premises. Well, your creations arise out of the fundamental element, if you will, of your being conscious, which is, I am. I'm going to put it this way. If the fundamental premise of your experience was, I don't exist, you would never get out of bed in the morning. You would never raise a finger. You would never attempt to think a thought, and you would never be open to a true idea. Your premise would be a block to the conscious experience of being. Now, God has the fundamental premise, I am. And as I said, that constitutes a movement of mind. And that movement is experienceable, we're going to say, to God. It becomes observable to God. And God, the presence of mind that is moving, because the premise is I am, sees everything. That the movement is causing to be extended into pattern and recognizable, for lack of better words, form. And God says, that's me. That's me. That's me. And God saw everything that He had made by virtue of the premise, I am. And behold, it was verily God. God, mind, recognizes itself as that which is moving. And so God could say, I am that, I am that, I am that. God recognizes Himself. That's different from giving definitions, because God looks at what already is as a result of the movement of the fundamental premise of being, and lets what His being has brought forth say to Him what He is. Are you following what I'm saying? It might become clearer as I explain to you how the ego does things. Now, mind you, this fundamental premise of being, which is the conscious experience of I am, which God is, as it, because it is a conscious movement of mind, moves, the movement is recognizable to that mind which is moving.